lovelies, I am Kate's Novel Idea, and I am here with Michael from The Fault in Our Vlogs. Say hi.
Hi.
And we decided that this collab video, we would go through a list of our top 10 favorite books and just kind of discuss them and discuss whether we have read each other's favorites, and if not, kind of recommend them to each other and, of course, to you. So, let us know which of these books you read and what you think of our top 10 pick. And that's it. So we're just gonna get started. Yay. And I'm starting with my number 10. By the way, making this list was ridiculously stressful, and I'm not sure how official it is. My favorite book changes every 10 minutes. But I went with ones that I know I will always love, and my number 10 was 5 Weeks in a Balloon by Jules Verne. And we've been talking about this one recently. You haven't read it, right?
I've not read that book, no.
I wasn't sure what I expected going into it. I was expecting a classic. I was expecting something kind of dry. I just read War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, and I was expecting something more on those lines, but I was reading it because I'm trying to get more into science fiction and going kind of the steampunk route.
Right.
Nothing like what I expected. It's very character driven. It's hilarious. The writing is just really easy to get into. It's old fashioned, but not in a difficult way, if that makes sense. I'm not especially bright, and I still really liked it. So.
That's really cool. I'm definitely going to read that when I finish the 11 books I still have to read.
Oh, the TBR pile that grows more than it's read. But I would highly recommend it. I think it's beautiful, and it's a classic, and
For sure.
Good introduction into steampunk. It's not super steampunk, but it's starting in that direction.
My number 10 is The Godfather by Mario Puzo. If you don't know what The Godfather is, you need to watch The Godfather and/or read the book. Preferably read the book, 'cause the book is really good. It's it's a little mature, because it's my dogs are barking. If you've seen my channel, you know my dogs. No, The Godfather is really good. The writing style is just phenomenal. You just feel like you're actually there. It's cliche, but the characters are really relatable, even though they're mob bosses. I would still recommend it to anyone who hasn't read it. And at the very least, watch the movie. Come on, it's a classic.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
You should definitely watch it. So I've not read 5 Weeks in a Balloon, and you've not read Godfather?
Nope.
All right, so that's another book for each of us to read.
Yeah, I have interesting taste. You may find a lot of mine to be kind of for a younger audience, but that one definitely sounds interesting. And like you say, it is a classic.
Yeah, it is a classic. So number 9 then?
All right, moving on to number 9. My list is not in order. Speaking of younger books, I have Into the Land of Unicorns by Bruce Coville, which sounds so much like it is juvenile fiction. Not gonna pretend otherwise. But it's not as light and girly, I think is the word I'm looking for. It's not as girly as you would expect. It's actually pretty intense. The magic system is beautiful. Bruce Coville was my favorite author in elementary school, and he's still high on my list. I don't know. There are complex character struggles. The heroine's relationship with her father is really complicated because he's a unicorn slayer, and I don't know. There is no way I can make this book sound as awesome as it is, because you just think, oh, sparkly unicorns. It's really not. They're super...
It sounds like it has some really rich tones to it.
It really does. It has a lot of depth. And that's really what drew me to it. I really, really like the first two. It's The Unicorn Chronicles, Into the Land of Unicorns, and The Song of the Wanderer, 2 of my favorite books. And I hadn't read the later ones. I'm not sure I don't know when they came out. I'm not sure they were out when I was first reading the series, but the third and the fourth both could have used a few more revisions. I think they're longer than they needed to be. Like there's a lot of repeated information and things. I actually know that he was fighting a deadline and got it in late. Like the book legitimately just needed more time.
Yeah.
What's the quote? If I'd had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. It's a real thing. If you have more time, your book will be shorter. And this one should have been. And I don't love the development of the heroine. I started really not liking her by like the third and the fourth. But that might just be personal preference. But I love the world building and I love the unicorns. They're fighting a war and it's intense and it really does have a lot of depth for being a unicorn book.
That's cool. My number 9 is another classic. It's Dracula by Bram Stoker.
That is on my list to read this year. Halloween, I'm reading Dracula.
Excellent. You better like it because it's really good. So first off, it's a book about a vampire, and the vampire doesn't sparkle, so that's always a win. Yeah. But let's see. It's been so long since I've like read it in full, but the way the vampire is portrayed, it's not so much like a monster, but more of just this really mysterious, enigmatic figure that okay, well, in the story, no spoilers. In the story, a man goes to stay with Dracula, and just slowly the man starts realizing that he's not allowed to leave. Dracula's never said anything. He's not like he's locked doors, but he's not like actually prevented. But the guy just knows, and that's one of the most terrifying parts, is that you know that it's bad and it's scary, but you also know that there's actually nothing really that bad happening. That's just the very beginning. Like the first few chapters, there's different sections, but it really paved the way for every vampire, or really every monster movie and book that's ever been made since.
Yeah, it was the birth of a legend, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I could get into like the feud between Britain and Romania at the time, but it's not super relevant to the book.
It's a book that probably deserves a whole discussion video all by itself. So eventually I'll read it.
I'm sure there are some.
Yeah, probably. I'm sure there are entire classes on that one book. That happens with classics. Number 8, right?
Yes.
Mine is Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury, which is a collection of interconnected short stories just about this boy during summer. It's really hard to put my finger on. Have you read any Ray Bradbury?
Just Fahrenheit 451.
Which is a little outside of his normal writing style, to be honest. He is incredibly poetic. And there are scenes in Dandelion Wine that are so immersive. I remember reading it and feeling like I could smell dandelions. It was that vivid. And wow. Reading his books, Dandelion Wine is like having a lucid dream. It's just, it's amazing. Like his writing is amazing. I would also recommend Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is like having a lucid nightmare. All of his writing is phenomenal. He is one of my top favorite authors. And Dandelion Wine is purely beautiful. I can't even, there's so much depth stories. He has one called The Happiness Machine. That's about a guy who builds a machine to make you happy. And his son goes into it and then gets super depressed, and it's beautiful.
Of course.
It's just phenomenal. There are some kind of scary chapters with, I think there's like a killer on the loose. It's been a long time since I've read it. I don't know. It's just, it's poetic, it's lyrical, it's beautiful. That's all I have to say about Dandelion Wine.
That actually is really similar to my number 8, Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, which anyone who's had like senior English has read Heart of Darkness.
Out of high school.
I won't get into the story too much because it's it's confusing. There's a lot to it, but it's just one of those books that you feel so much emotion, and I felt a lot of confusion. But I mean, I read it in high school. There's also so many like symbolic features with the 3 women and all of the natives. I don't remember what country they were in. They were in a few countries. No, it's definitely a book that you need to read twice. But it's also a book I would recommend. The reason why it's number 8 on my list and not higher is because it's kind of a slow read. You just you read it and you're like, oh wow, I've been reading this for a while, but you still enjoy it.
Right. Yeah, I don't know much about that one. It would definitely be interesting to check out.
It took a lot of looking at Spark Notes to try to figure out like, okay, what does he mean by this? Because almost every other line is a metaphor.
Oh yeah. That's all part of reading classics.
Yep.
All right, number 7. I have The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, which you've actually read.
Yes, I've actually read The Hobbit.
That's like our first crossover, isn't it? The only one that you've actually.
Yes, I think it is.
Yeah,
it might be the last one too.
I think we have a few others.
Somewhere, I'm sure we do.
Yeah. Yeah, I love The Hobbit for being the classic quest story.
Right.
I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I was about halfway through it on my last reread of it, and I suddenly realized you could all go home and nothing bad would happen. This quest is not actually relevant. Normally, a quest story is like the fate of the world.
To save the world or to rescue someone. No, there's
this is a legit treasure quest.
Because way more treasure or way more trouble going on this quest than ever would have happened if they stayed home.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous, but I really love it. I mean, the movie tried to add all sorts of like intensity about them getting their home back.
We're not talking about the movie.
But the book mostly just feels like a treasure quest, and I like treasure quests, and it's silly, and it's just light and fun, and so the epitome of what a fantasy novel should be, in my opinion.
I do like that it really paved the way for every other like hero's journey type story. Star Wars, Harry Potter, they all follow it to some extent. I mean, the book could have used a few more women in it, but
I disagree. Actually, I think adding women ruins a lot of things, and it really bugs me. I get frustrated. It makes no sense for there to be a woman. It's a man's quest. Why would they have brought a woman along?
Even in the entire lake town, no women. I mean, they're implied.
There are women there, but it's a war, and I felt no need to have any female characters, especially given the time period that the book was written. It really doesn't bother me, but I'm about as far from being a feminist as it's possible to be, so maybe we shouldn't get into that discussion.
Maybe not.
I just felt no need for there to be one. It's a war, and I'm sure the women were being useful, but they weren't necessarily running off to slay the dragon, and that's okay with me. It's a beautiful book and a solid fantasy novel. And as a writer of quest stories, I appreciate it especially.
Yeah, I suppose so.
I'm not actually sure if we can pause.
Okay.
We can stop, but I'm not sure we can go back. Sorry, I'm not actually very good at this, but I don't think there's a way to pause it and start it again.
Okay. Can we maybe come back to this in a sec? Because there's I need to help my mother in the kitchen.
Yeah, I will see what stopping does. We have one viewer. Viewer, we are stopping for a moment. I don't know what will happen.